So, welcome to Unscripted. You want to do introductions first?
Should we do them last?
Hi, I'm Patrick. Erika. Hi, I'm Erika. Welcome to Unscripted.
I'm Danet.
I'm Patrick.
Awesome. So now we know who we are. Okay. Now what we're talking about today is the sort of short-ish film called Seawall.
32 minutes.
32 minutes.
33 according to IMDb.
33 minutes. That's why we have computers for fact-checking. Okay. And it's a short film, 33 minutes long, that stars Andrew Scott and just Andrew Scott. Who was it written by?
By Simon Stevens.
Written by Simon Stevens. Stephen Stevens, we're not sure. But he's an amazing writer. And Andrew Scott is an amazing actor. And
It is directed by Andrew Porter and Simon Stevens.
Yeah. Anyway, the story is basically going through the life of Alex. He's telling a story to the camera about things that have happened in his past, and this particular thing that he's talking about is going through sort of his relationship with his wife, his relationship with his stepfather, and then what happens to their little girl who actually ends up dying. And this is spoilers. No, it's spoilers because if you're watching this video, then you've watched the movie.
Really?
Yeah,
yes.
I might have watched it just because
this is not.
Maybe you should have dedicated fans just watch every video you put out.
What?
Maybe we just have dedicated fans to just watch every video.
Okay, well, we're gonna put a spoiler alert. Spoilers. There's spoilers all throughout this. We're talking in depth about the film, which means we have to talk about what happens. Okay, so
It'd be awkward
otherwise. We'll put a link in the description to where you can go and get the film and buy it, or you can have your friends buy it and watch their version like these two did.
But you should buy it.
But you should buy it because it's amazing and it's pretty cheap. I think I paid $15 and that was when it like first came out.
€350. Pounds. Euros. Pounds. I don't know.
I can't remember how I got it, but I'm pretty sure it was on the same website. But okay. I've watched it 50 million times over, and these two just watched it for the first time. So, do you guys want to start the discussion about it?
I haven't forgiven you yet.
Yeah, no, not forgiving.
Thanks.
If you make your friends watch it, stand far away so they can't hit you.
And keep your dogs out of the room because they might bark at inopportune moments or try to attack your feet.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
So, questions, or who wants to start the discussion? Anybody?
One of the things that I noticed really quickly was that it really is a stream of consciousness short film. It doesn't go through in a linear fashion the events in his life. It sort of does, but he'll skip from one subject. Like at one point he's talking about swimming and his daughter, and all of a sudden he'll switch back to faith and the existence of God, and that takes you a little while to keep up with and to realize what's happening. But I think once you do realize what he's doing through his monologue, it's really incredible and it's really well done.
Definitely. It's really, really powerful because I know he talks about stuff and then he sort of goes off topic and comes back to them. Like, still one of my favorite parts in the entire film is when he's like near the beginning and he points out just like randomly, I have a hole in the center of me, and like he just sort of points it out like it's nothing, and he's just kind of even smiling through it. And then near the end he brings it up again, and that's when he's during his part where he's just falling apart emotionally, and I think that's the part that really always hit me the hardest because it was just, I don't know, it was extremely emotional. Andrew does like a really amazing job of actually portraying that emotion. And it's not funny anymore. It's not a funny little joke that he made in the beginning anymore. It's actually really extremely depressing.
Yep.
Do you have anything?
Well, the stream of I'm going to go back to the stream of consciousness aspect of the movie. I will agree. It is really hard to get used to at first because you're looking at it like, he was talking about scuba diving. Why are we back at his house talking about his wife in a dress? It does take some getting used to, but honestly, I think it really shows more of Alex's character to set up that way.
It does.
It shows how he handles, especially with the end when you're looking back on it, shows how he handles the situation that he's been through, and it really shows his progression through his relationships, specifically with his wife and was it stepfather or was it father-in-law? I assume it was father-in-law.
It was father-in-law.
Did I say stepfather?
Yeah.
You did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant father-in-law.
Oops.
Yeah, I think it really shows Alex's relationships as well, because it starts out as, he really just, he talks about how, the one wording. Oh, yes.
Stream of consciousness.
Yes. I really like the fact that he used the stream of consciousness to show his progression of his relationship with his father-in-law. Because the first time he's really mentioned, it's already definitely into the relationship. Then he goes back to the beginning and shows, okay, well, this is how I was first introduced to him. And then it goes to the very end where they're sitting at the house after the death of Lucy, and it shows how they all went through it. I think it really benefits the way the story goes.
And I think it is so realistic because that's how people think. I went to a writing camp at one point, and we would do a daily writing journal where you just wrote out your thoughts, and you really start to notice the way you think. You don't stay on one train of thought. You'll be thinking, wow, I really enjoyed that fruit salad I had for breakfast, and then you go, who has fruit salad for breakfast? And then you think, wow, there's a bird outside the window, and then you come back. Maybe not. So I think that it's really, really powerful because of that.
I know I was reading through this about on their website that's basically talking about how they did the film and everything, and like what they went through when they did the film. And one of the parts was talking about how they were showing it to people. I can't remember who they were showing to it specifically, but they were showing the film to someone, and when the person finished watching it, they were just sort of like, did that actually happen to him? Like, they were kind of concerned, I guess, because they do such a good job. Like, the writing combined with Andrew Scott's acting is like, I know when I first watched it, I like had trouble actually remembering that it was Andrew Scott. I kept calling him Alex in my head because I was like, that really seems like it actually happened to him. And I think it's like the performance and the writing all together is just really extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the fact that it is literally just one person telling the story, I think, and the simple setting too. It's set in a rented photo
Flat.
studio.
Mm-hmm.
Which reflects Alex's career as a photographer, but the fact that it's just Alex talking to a camera, you don't focus on anything else. You focus just on the story, which for this kind of narrative, you really have to. And because of that, it then creates a better emotional tie with the viewer. And I think that's why the movie is as powerful as it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love the whole one-man act play thing going on with that. I just, at first it was kind of weird because I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to sit here for a half hour and watch this guy talk to a camera. And I thought it wasn't going to work, but then by the end I was like, that is the best money I have ever spent in my life.
$7, by the way.
Is it $7 now?
It is $7.
I swear I spent like $15 when it came out, but
it
whatever.
is $7 for either Seawall or Seawall subtitled.
So,
$7. Well, yeah, you should buy it. Advertising. What else?
Don't look at me, mate. I don't know.
I thought, because again in the About Me, they were talking about how they did it, and they did like 3 takes of it, and they did it all the way through. They didn't like stop for breaks or anything. The only cutting they did was twice because the camera that they used could only record up to 12 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just like these 2 invisible cuts, and then they went through and they did that whole thing, and they made it like seem like he was the only person in the room. Like, they walled themselves off so that Andrew couldn't see them when he was acting. So it was like that really got the emotional connection where he was just talking to the camera and just talking to the audience, because at first it was stage play, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that's
he would just talk to the
Stage play,
audience.
and he would talk directly to the audience, and they wanted to keep that emotional connection, so they sort of just put him in a room alone and was like, talk to the camera.
I wonder if you're not getting that connection even more when you're just talking to the camera, because you have to imagine your audience. You're not seeing them, and that makes you even more alone, but it also makes it seem like you want to reach out to them even more because you can't see them.
I think talking to a camera is even like just more intimate because there's nobody around, and so it's sort of like it's just you talking. It's not you sort of thinking about, well, if I do this, they're gonna look at me weird or something, but it's just you and the camera and nobody else, and you can do whatever, and it just gives a more intimate feel to it, I think.
Mm-hmm. So let's see about the metaphor of the seawall.
Yeah,
what's the seawall?
Metaphor of the actual seawall. The title of the film
is mentioned once in the entire thing.
Yeah, but it's mentioned once, but it like is all encompassing over the entire story, especially at the end where he's like saying, you know, he's just absolutely falling inside himself, and it sort of gives that image of like if you'd fallen into the pit that the seawall created, and it's just falling into that dark, you can't see anything. And
speaking of which, the seawall, do you remember, I'm sorry I have to do this, do you remember the drop off in Finding Nemo? that is the seawall. It's where the ocean gradually slopes down and then just drops hundreds and hundreds of feet. You can't see the bottom, it's all black, and in the film it's described as one of the most terrifying things he's ever seen.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the film, when he starts, like Danet said, talking about falling inside himself, it's that same pit, that same abyss. Keeping our sound system going.
What else? Do you want to elaborate more on the metaphor, or do you want to talk about it more?
I can say that as someone who did snorkeling, and the water dropped down about 10 or 20 feet, it's terrifying. It's terrifying, and it wasn't even that deep.
I'm absolutely terrified of deep water, so when he started talking about that, I was just like chills the first time I watched it. I was like, don't even go into that.
And although it is only directly mentioned, I think, once,
one time,
there is a motif throughout the entire thing of him swimming and of the ocean and just being by the seaside. And there are different parts that you can see sort of coincide with the rest of his life. At one point he's talking about how he swam out into the sea, and when he looked back at the shore, it was like watching the telly on mute with the sound cut off. And then later on he's back in the rented studio, and he goes over to the window every once in a while and talks about the people he can see out on the street, but you have the impression that, again, he can't really hear what they're saying, and it's that same sort of disconnection.
Mm-hmm. He mentions also, you were talking about the motif of mentioning the swimming. He talks a lot about or at least in the beginning, he talks about the currents. He brings up how you're supposed to react when the currents go against you and how you can't panic. You have to just sort of breathe. And I think he does that a lot physically, because I know there's moments when he gets to a certain emotional part and he just starts talking faster and faster and faster. Like when he's describing actually Lucy falling off the cliff, I always notice that he just starts talking faster and there's no pauses, and he just stays still and describes the entire thing in almost one breath. And I think that relates back to the currents too, and how he's that entire time, because it just seems like that entire time when he's describing her falling and then having to take her back to the house, he just was basically swept away by the currents, and he was panicking, and he had to just sort of breathe, which he mentions he's not even like crying or anything. He's just sort of walking, and he's just trying to breathe and get past the currents.
Exactly.
You want to say anything else?
It was very interesting. I did really love the metaphor of the seawall, because it's actually, I didn't think of it at first. It honestly came to me when Erika mentioned it after we were done watching it.
He looked it up on IMDb. They talk about an emotional abyss, and I'm like, oh god, everything makes sense now.
I actually haven't even read the page yet. I pulled it up for reference purposes.
Reasons.
But I noticed the small things that change in him as he talks about after his life after Lucy. And at the beginning, he talks about all the fun times they've had and how beautiful she was and how she had them wrapped around her finger. But after the fall, he just talks about how disconnected he is with society. He brings back up the metaphor of the hole inside. And one part that really stuck with me was when he was mentioning on their way back how I think they flew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he thought it was odd that on the passenger list they had the names and they just had human remains. And that connected to a scene just before that where he was talking about carrying her back, and he wouldn't refer to her as Lucy instead of this bag of meat and air. So I think immediately he knew, I'm not the same man I was 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Which falls back onto Andrew Scott's amazing acting. And
he's amazing. I love him. He's my favorite actor ever.
Ever.
He's amazing. He does. Because, like, if you watch interviews with Andrew Scott, he's very, like, sort of reserved. And even when he, like, because I know he's accepted awards. I've watched him accept awards before on TV, and he's very sort of stuttery almost, and he's very reserved, and he just strikes you as this really shy person. And then he does this performance, and then he has his performance as Moriarty in Sherlock, and it's just like, that is not the same person. Like, you cannot even imagine. Like, he just goes through this entire change, and it's incredible, and I love watching that.
And going back to what Patrick was saying about the before and after, there was this really subtle thing I noticed him saying, or I thought it was subtle anyway, I'm not sure how subtle I am, where he's talking about he can't cry anymore. He just can't cry, even though it sounds like he's about to physically break down on the floor. But earlier in the movie, he's talking about his relationship with his wife, Helen, and how she was so strong and he would hardly ever have to comfort her because she didn't cry as much, and he cried at everything. He talks about how he can't even watch an episode of ER without breaking down. And you just kind of realize that, and you can feel there's a hole right through his stomach.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different things that just connects back and forth throughout the entire film, and I think that's why I can keep watching it over and over different times, because it's like I just keep making the connections and they just feel different each and every time I make them, and it's still emotional every time I watch it too. It's not like there's like some shows where like it has an emotional scene that you bawl at the first time you watch it, but then you can watch it a few more times and it's just sort of like, okay, well, I know what happens afterwards, so it's really okay. It's whatever. And then with this one, it's like I can still watch it and still like feel okay for most of it and just feel a little sad, and then it gets to like certain parts and I'm like, nope, that's it. It's the trigger.
Yep.
But how did you like it as just like a regular film to like watch just whenever?
It's definitely different, but I think that that's good because, well, variety is the spice of life. I know that they say a lot of things are the spice of life. But in addition, his relationship with his wife, that was so well done. I mean,
it really was.
When they're talking about how she's having a C-section at one point, and he goes up and they tell him, oh, look at your baby, and etc., and he's going like, I never know where to look, I just smile and nod, so I look down and all I can really see is the yellow of the inside of her stomach. And I think when you see the inside of someone's stomach, your relationship has gone to a new level, and a
whole new level.
And just the little things that they would talk about, that was really heartwarming, and it makes what happens and what you can infer about the aftermath and what you know might happen even harder to take.
I think going off that is like he really talks about his wife a lot in the beginning. Like he has the moments where he's talking about they're driving to the house in France, and they're, you know, they have all these lovely little moments, like when she's showing him the dress and he's like, I'm absolutely in love with her, and like you have all these moments with them, and then after he tells the story about Lucy, it's just sort of like she doesn't really show up that much, and I think that's sort of shows like how he's disconnected from even that. Like he says that, you know, the only thing I can do now is work, like I know I can do that, and it's not like the only thing I can do is, stay with my wife and get through it together. It's that he has to work and stay disconnected from all of that.
Losing a child in a marriage is generally regarded as one of the most difficult things any couple can go through.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you
Can't do it.
you just can't do it, and in any case it's never going to be exactly like it was before, but you just have to pick up the pieces. And this got really dark, and I'm gonna say, Patrick, please say
Patrick,
something now.
What was your opinion as just a movie to watch? Like, if you were saying, I saw this movie the other day and
I saw this movie the other day.
it crushed my soul. And
I'll never be the same.
Erika
Go
cursed
home and
it
cry.
yeah, Erika said rude words.
I said one rude word.
And then
What did you
apologize
think
to me.
about it?
Yes, I did.
I will stick to my stance as the same one that you finished. I'll stick to my stance that I had when I finished the movie, is that I still have no idea what to think about this movie.
No idea. You had to watch it a few times.
It's a very powerful movie, and I really enjoyed it. And when Danet was trying to convince me to be part of this episode, she was like, well, this movie is... When she was describing, she was going through how it was just Andrew Scott, and I had no idea what to think, so I had no expectations, so I can't say it was better or worse than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very powerful movie.
It
was a very powerful movie, and I highly recommend it, and I think Andrew Scott's acting is amazing.
I'm pretty sure, like, if you watch it, you're gonna have an emotion. I know I watched it with Danielle one time, like, I had her spend the night, and I was like, hey, let's watch Seawall, because that was, like, right when I really got into it first, and I was like, there's this it's really good, and it has Andrew Scott, and you like him, and let's just watch it, and I promise it's not that bad, because at that point, I had watched it, like, maybe 3 times, and I'd gotten to the point where I could get through most of it without crying, and I was like, I promise it's not that bad, and then we watched it, and, like, when it was finished, we kind of just sat there quietly for a little bit. And then she, like, shoved her face in a pillow and was like, I hate you.
This is literally the same exact reaction we had after we finished it. It was like, after the movie stopped, it was just silence.
Because, like, I never know what to say, like, when it finishes.
Cursed. And then
yeah.
she cursed.
Yeah.
Because, like, when you finish, it ends so heavily, and it's just, like, you don't know, like,
it ends abruptly, too.
You feel like you can't move or anything, because, like, it's just quiet, and you're like, well, if I move, something's gonna happen.
You have no idea what to do. It's grief, and when someone is feeling grief, you have no idea what to say to them. And for a while I thought this was just me, but you don't just turn to someone and go, I'm sorry, hey, let's go out for ice cream, because it doesn't quite work like that. You just sit there and stare at them.
It's very much like that. Like, it's very much like if a friend came to you and was like, my daughter just died, and, like, you would do the same thing. You would just sit there and be like, I don't know what to say, and, like, you get that same feeling from this movie, because it's just Andrew Scott standing there telling you this story and looking at the camera and telling you this, and you feel like somebody's telling you that story, like, as a friend, and you're just like, you don't know what to say, because you wouldn't know what to say in that real situation.
No.
It's very...
I kept myself from crying at the really bad parts by pretending this was a backstory for Moriarty, except now this is probably just going to make me feel a little worse.
I don't know, you were... I thought about that too today. I was, like, sitting through, I was like, I wonder if anybody's actually applied this to Moriarty's character. I'm like, there's probably some cruel person out there that has. Yeah, that was, like, because I was reading through stuff today before this, and they talked about how it was Andrew Scott's idea to actually release the version that they did to online on the same day that Reichenbach aired for Sherlock, the show, when Moriarty, like, sort of steals that, and they were like, it was a good idea, we're glad he had that idea. I'm like, that's actually really smart, because it's like, spoilers for Sherlock, Moriarty dies on that rooftop, and so I think Andrew was like, well, all these people really like this character, so I'm gonna release this movie. I'm gonna release this movie on the day that he dies in the show, and then everybody's gonna be like, I want more of his face, and so they go get that. Which is actually exactly what I did.
More of his face.
Yeah, any other comments that you want to make about the movie, about Andrew Scott,
I thought it was very interesting that his career was photography.
Yeah.
Because the thought occurred to me when Erika was talking about how he would just keep working, and she was talking, so I didn't interrupt. And his philosophy on photography is that it captures life in that moment. So when he says he's going to keep working, he's going to keep preserving life, even though the one life he really cared about is not there anymore. So I think he's trying to fill that hole with his career, trying to capture other people's lives, essentially, for them, so in the event that something happens, like, they'll have a photo. Because he never mentioned whether or not he took pictures of his daughter. I imagine he probably did. But his career, the thought didn't occur to me until when Eric was mentioning it. But the fact that he was a photographer, I think, also plays into his mindset, and it goes back to how he's preserving life. So he's filling the hole and the lack of life by preserving other lives, which I thought was actually very interesting.
Never thought about that before.
And at the same time, that's a little note of hope in it, because it seems like he's so abyssal.
Just done, like, in less poetic terms, he's just done. He's just finished.
Done. But Patrick saying that, and him continuing his work and saying, you know, at least I have my work, that shows that he has some hope that life still will go on, although he thinks that some people have, what did he say, soap opera lives?
Soap opera lives, yeah.
Lives are so vacuous.
We have to wrap this up now, because we've got like 45 seconds left on recording time, so you should definitely watch Seawall. We'll put something below so you can go look at it and spend 7 of your hard-earned dollars on this amazing masterpiece that will crush your soul and your heart, and yay! Tell everybody about it, yay! Okay.
Subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, definitely subscribe.
We're cute.
Yes.
You should.
Okay, so bye.
Love you.